Welcome back, everybody, to the Agent Box with me, Sham, and
The Maverick Abir! How are you, everyone, this week?
listen, guys. I've been sort of saying this for weeks and weeks, right? There's some banging going on in the background. Please ignore that. It's just some building work that's happening where I am. But listen, look. Okay, so 11 o'clock on a Thursday, we're back at the Agent Box. And we're going to talk about some interesting stuff today. I think every week I say this every week. I don't know whether you find it interesting or not, but certainly it's interesting for me and Abir. But Abir, what have you been up to, man? What's been happening this week?
Well, regular, typical weekend. More cleaning, washing, and putting my feet up. Nothing exciting. Because me and you both have been on the road for a while. So a nice, quiet weekend was all I prayed for. So it was perfect for me.
Good. Well, I tell you what, last weekend I spent a lot of the day, apart from trying to celebrate Mother's Day, but I spent a lot of the day, I think on Sunday morning, actually painting, because we're having some work done and it's just unbelievably messy and there's so much to do, man. It's quite incredible. But anyway, enough of that. Right. Okay. So what we want to talk about today is to do with, we've got a guest that we're going to bring on in a minute from University of Huddersfield, because we're going to be talking about student counselling. And I think we've covered a little bit of this before, but it is something that is quite important, especially because I think everybody that's working for the UK probably will know and understand that the numbers are not as buoyant as they were this time last year. So everybody's scrambling around looking for students. And I think one of the key things is this idea of being able to counsel students so that you've got the right students that you're working with to maximize your conversions. Would you not agree, Abir?
Absolutely, because we sell something here intangible, so you cannot. So you have to be very thorough with your words and counseling, and that's why we reiterate almost every other week that how important counseling is to our industry. And thankfully, we have an expert today on our panel who's going to explore more on that, I guess.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is that it's increasing conversion, isn't it? Counseling becomes important because you've got to increase your conversions when application numbers are not as high as what they used to be. You've got to get more through through that conversion mill to make sure that you're enrolling more students and therefore maintaining your revenue, and your business, kind of
and
operations.
Also, linking to what we talked about last week as well, mis-selling as agent. Are we as agents are mis-selling some USPs of the university, and how to counter that as well?
Well, that will test your ability to counsel. Do you understand? Because you need to be informed of the universities that you're promoting. You need to know exactly what it is that their courses are all about, what their entry criteria is, their fees, scholarships, all of that. Now, with those tools, it's how you then counsel the student to make sure that you're making the right decision for the student, but also you're maximizing your conversion rates so that you're actually making money. Okay, before we get into this, I need to say that the Agent Box is sponsored by SAM CRM, which is a CRM that's been designed by agents for agents. So please head over to their website. It's www.samcrm.co.uk. If you are in the market, if you feel the need for a CRM system. Okay, with that said, let's bring on David and let's grill him. Let's see what he's got to say.
Turn up the drum roll.
And here he is. David,
good morning.
Just for disclosure, guys, David and I have worked for many years together. When I was at the University of Huddersfield, David and I did a lot of work, particularly around agents, actually. Am I right, David?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you both. And absolutely, Sham. Yeah, we worked for a good number of years, did a lot of work with agents and how we sort of, pivot towards that sort of development of progress and, sort of adding that professional element to what they deliver, both in the country, but also in other aspects as well. But we've done a lot of work together for sure.
Good stuff. And I know that David is like me, he's pro agent. He's not one of these staff members, one of these colleagues that, I don't really like agents. I think David enjoys working with agents, wants to promote agents because I think David, when we worked together, we talked about having a predictable pipeline. If you've got a good set of agents that you're working with, then as far as a university is concerned, you've got a predictable pipeline. And I think that makes your lives slightly easier. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in many aspects of the recruitment world, data does dictate many aspects. I think for us, in terms of the planning, the meeting of KPIs, the drive towards sort of, recruitment, data dictates it. You've got to follow the data. It's almost like the cliche, follow the money. And that's where data leads to the money for us. And that's what we did. We did with our pipelines. We built up the analysis of data to the point at which we were able to help recruit, but also help with train as well, and pivot what agents should be doing in terms of their counselling and training as well. So absolutely. But on the flip side of that, which we'll talk a little bit about later, it's not just the cold, hard data. There's also the warmth side of it as well in terms of that customer service delivery.
Absolutely, man. I think somebody once said to me many years ago that student recruitment, international student recruitment, is a science and an art. There's two elements to this. Do you know what I mean? That the data kind of drives you in a certain direction, but there's an art to it. But listen, let me ask you this then, right? In my opinion, what I think is happening in the world often, okay, with volume, being a kind of like an issue for a lot of agents. They've got, they're doing events or through social media, they're getting huge, numbers coming through the top of the funnel. What often I have seen, and I've witnessed this, that agents have actually, they haven't got the time to counsel. What they're doing is they're processing applications. Everybody is talking about the same thing. Certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, this has been the case, that you've just got so many students applying, you haven't got time to counsel. Owners would say that to me quite openly. Look, my counselors don't have the time. We've just got to get through them. But also, I don't want to interrogate the student too much and put the student off. Okay, I want the students come to my organization wanting to put an application in. My, customer, if you like, which is that student, is always right. So the customer wants to go to University X. I happen to represent University X. Great, I'm going to put the application in. Do you see that? Do you see any of that, or do you see something different?
It's a good point, Sham. For me, the way whenever I start off my training when I'm visiting in country, whatever I'm doing online, I always start off by saying, look, you guys have the difficult job. I have the easy job. I only have to represent one university. I have one set of portfolio of courses. They have hundreds on their portfolio of universities and strands of courses and departments. So I sympathize a lot with them. There's a lot on their plate there. And in that sense of what you started off there, Sham, and that point was, there's a sense of farming, there's a sense of push of applications, a rush to it. And, there's no sense of stopping and actually providing a wraparound, holistic approach to that sort of delivery of quality customer service. So absolutely there is that. But at the same time, we do need to stop, collect our thoughts, collect our resources, and deliver it in the best way possible as a sort of a customer service. So there is a respect there in terms of what they have on their plate. For me, where it starts off at in terms of this chain of support is from us as a university. If we don't input the support and guidance to counsellors and agents at any stage of the year or throughout on a regular basis, then that quality of delivery on the other side is not going to be as good as what we expect. So to me, it starts with us. I need to sit down with the counsellors and agents and really go to town in terms of what we are as a university. Now, with respect to where I work, we're not like a Lamborghini in the world of universities. So my job's even more difficult, and for them as well, to make the light shine on Huddersfield, because many people will come to the counsellors and say, look, I've heard of this Russell Group University, this Ivy League University. Huddersfield, what is that? Is that a food? Is that a place? What is it? So we have to get past that initial sort of ignorance. So, on both sides, it's important that we really try and push and sort of guide insight and support on the USPs, what we're about, the nuances, and why we are a really good university.
I love that. Is Huddersfield a food? I'm going to use that.
Honestly, I've had it many times. The amount of times, it's like, I give you an example, and I'm sure there are other universities with respect of our sort of in that stature, where you go to a big fair and you'll be sitting in the room, and as soon as those big doors open and all the crowds come in like a rock concert, it's almost straight to the Ivy League, it's straight to the Russell Groups. Then you give it about an hour, they all have seen them and they go, oh, what's that Huddersfield? Let's go and find out what it is. And once they get to us, it's like, great, we've got you. And we have a very, very good chat. And we often have a longer chat than with respect to them to other universities, because they have a bit more quality time.
Okay, look, let me put this to you, right? So you're saying that the responsibility is with you guys to train the agents, train the counsellors, get them to understand what your university is and all of that, right? So, okay, you've done that training. You've done it face to face. You've traveled out to their country. You've sat with the agents, you've sat with the counsellors, whatever it is. What do you then expect those agents to do with that training? I think this is the crux of what we want to drive at today. That, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, that actually if you guys don't put that information in the right way to the agents, how are they expected to, there is an argument that me as an agent, you're my client, it's my responsibility to do some research about who you are and where you are and what you are, because I wanted your contract. But, fair enough that actually the university does have a responsibility to present that information. What do you then expect those counselors to do, the next student? Because I tell you what, when I used to do this kind of training, I always used to say, when the next student walks into your office, what are you going to do? All right. So that's a question I'm putting to you, that you've given them everything that you can. You've explained, where Huddersfield is, what it is, how to spell it, blah, blah, blah. What do you expect after that? Once you've gone, what do you want the agent to do?
Well, there's two factors here. There's from the agent side of it, I want them to do their due diligence. If I put the time and effort into giving great insight and support, and we are a key partner contractually, they need to follow that on in terms of what they deliver, and how they deliver it in terms of what I expect the quality to be is having a good quality CRM system. Is also having a good resource pack there. So make sure they've got good links, media, marketing collateral to deliver to the students, but also, how can I put it, a passion behind it as well. I'm often quite passionate in what I deliver, and I'm hoping that is reflected upon what they deliver as well. So I want to make sure that they deliver that in spades in terms of their resources and also their delivery. At the same time, if I go and visit an agent office and I see consultation happening from, especially when I've been training them as well, my background is teaching, by the way. I've got about 8 years of teaching prior to went into recruitment. So the way I find teaching is this: if you're able to teach one student an element, that person in theory should be able to pass on that teaching element to another student. Right. So there's a pass on effect. So if I have that in place, where if I go and see a counsellor and they're explaining in a really good way what Huddersfield's about, selling all the key points, then if I go and ask that student, a little bit later and say, look, can you reiterate what Huddersfield is about? And if it's clearly stuck in their memory, and they can pass it on to a family member in a very clear, articulate way with the nuance, etc., with a bit of passion as well, job's done in my eyes.
Okay, well, Abir, let me put this to you, right? So you've worked for years at an agency. Listening to what David's saying, what did you guys used to do in your agency? So somebody like David comes over, has a chat with you and gives you all the information. What would you expect your counselors, or what would you expect yourself to do when he's gone? Abir?
To be honest, I still can't get over my head over that food analogy.
The what?
I can't. First of all, I just can't still get over that food analogy. So I was just wondering if Russell Group and IB groups are fine dining, would Huddersfield be a comfort food or something like that?
Hey, listen, don't knock Huddersfield, man. I've got an MBA from Huddersfield. I'm not only an ex-colleague, I'm an alumni. You know what I mean? The support systems there are pretty good.
Well, if we're going to use another analogy of fine dining, if you go to a fine dining restaurant, all you're going to get is a couple of peas on a plate.
Yeah,
we offer the whole 3 courses here, and it fills you right up, and you walk away happy with a smile on your face.
But yeah, all jokes apart.
Go on, Abir, man. Come on.
Sorry, Abir, we're waiting for you, man. Sorry, I don't know if that analogy's knocked off of your feet there or not.
Abir, I don't know whether you heard my question to you. What I'm saying to you, Abir, specifically, right, is that, with David's telling us that this is what he kind of expects the agents to do. When you were working in your company, previous company, what were you guys doing when somebody like David had come, visited you guys, gave you the training, disappeared? What were you then doing?
To be honest, for us, it was service that was the most important thing, because like David mentioned, we used to work with hundreds of universities, and most of the universities, USPs, or the offerings were pretty much same. So for me, for that 30 minutes with David was much important than what the training was and what the other thing was, because from that 30 minutes, I could gauge whether I can work with this guy or not, whether this guy will go above and beyond for my students, because students are my first priority. So I would have to make a judgment call whether if I have a query for a particular student. Yes, of course, I'm not going to bother David with just random queries that I can find online or on the website or anywhere in one of their communication. But when there is a critical case or there are some support required, whether David would be the guy who is going to escalate my case, get things resolved, or whether he's just going to be a messenger. Like he's going to pass my query to a relevant team, and then he's not going to take any ownership of that. So for me, most importantly was that.
I think you guys are being too safe here, right? Look, what I'm saying is this, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. That on a particular trip years and years ago, I went on a trip to Bangladesh, actually, on a business trip, and we were at a British Council fair, I think it was, and there was this one guy, right? Young bloke, really energetic, absolutely desperate to want to come to study here in the UK. And I was, this guy just wouldn't leave me alone. He was like, he wanted my details. He wanted to know where I was staying and blah, blah, blah. And he kept coming back. I think it was about a 2 or 3 day event. He kept coming back to the event and wanting to come and talk to me. What I figured out, right, was, and this is what I'm talking about here, do agents do this? I wasn't interested. This guy would have applied in his sleep if I gave him the opportunity. But I wasn't prepared for him to just apply. I wanted to know, have you got the grades required to get onto the course that you want to do? And have you got the money to study here in the UK? Mm-hmm. This is not a cheap thing. You understand that, what are your financial, credentials like? What's your financial situation like? To cut a very long story short, the guy had bundles of passion, really wanted to apply, had the grades, had no money. Okay. So if I had just, thought to myself, wow, great, here's a guy, he wants to apply, let me get that application in, keeps my boss happy. If I was an agent, keeps my boss happy, there's another application through, maybe I could get this guy to get 4 of his mates to apply as well. Do you know what I mean? So that we've got more in the kitty. But actually, the guy's got absolutely no money to come and study. He hadn't even thought about how much it's going to cost. He had this thinking, I'll figure it out when I get there. He's looking at it step by step. If I can get an application, then I'll get an offer letter. I get that offer letter, then I'll find the money. You understand? To try and I'll beg, steal, and borrow.
I was, and I still am maybe a bit of a gold digger in that respect. So if you no money, no honey, you don't have my time.
That might top my analogy, to be honest, man. but no, Sham, that's a really good point. I think we've talked about the passion and making sure you're memorable, but absolutely right. And I learned this on my first few trips. I was a bit wet behind the ears and just trying to be a bit nice. But there is a cold tactic here as well. Not cold tactic, but actually being very resourceful here and being filter heavy in the sense that you need to be smart in how you deliver the filtration of people who come to you, like your case. And I've learned that over the years, because where I start off when I counsel is, and this is what I say to agents as well, ask questions. Ask about 3 or 4 to 5 key questions, which are finance, academic, whatever it might be, compliance based. And that is a nice foundation to work on, whether they are suitable or not. Even if they are passionate, lovely, really friendly, provide, offering to take you for dinner, whatever it might be, you've got to have that filtration, because one, it's all about managing expectations. You don't want to take them on a long road of your wasted time and their wasted time. You need to manage it at the early stages, because if you manage expectations early on, whether it is a reality check or not, it helps matters for everybody involved. So, and it's quicker because it's better for business as well. You can move on to those more credible cases.
You see, this is I think at the crux of the issue. I mean, look, David, if somebody came to you, right, if you were, put yourselves in an agent's shoes, right, and somebody came to you and said to you, you know what, I want to move to the UK, right? I want to move to the UK, and I've heard through friends that the education route is a really good way to move to the UK. Now, here are my qualifications. I've got a degree. I want to do a postgraduate. Do you have any options? And I've heard the north of the UK is a good place to go. What would you say to that student as an agent?
Straight away, if I had a red sort of like light in the corner of my screen, they go ding, 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 because what they've front loaded there is their reasoning is not for academic purposes straight away. That worries me straight away, because I've got my compliance UKVI hat on thinking, hold on a sec, what's the narrative here? What they should approach me with is, oh, I've heard about Huddersfield, that sounds really good because I want to study this course, or I'm really interested in studying data analytics in the UK. That kind of thing should be completely reversed or completely taken out of the picture. So straight away, that approach for me, alarm bells, because their purpose of reasoning behind what they want to do is not good in my eyes. So it's that ability to filter and make sure agents are utilizing the same approach.
Because you know what, David, right? So this is a really, I'm glad you answered it that way, because when you deliver as a university, right, you deliver your presentation, your USPs, you know, all the reasons as to why somebody needs to go and study at your university. And a lot of cases, agents listening to that are thinking of every loophole. And with all due respect, right, I love agents. I work as an agent, right? I work with agents. But there are a lot of counselors that will be looking for loopholes. That, right, so you guys are slightly cheaper than that guy. Oh, you've got that extra, scholarship. Oh, your entry criteria is not as hard. They're not looking at it from the right perspective. It's the same information, but it's the interpretation of that information. You know what I mean? They're looking at, how can I fit this into the narrative of, right, it's an easier place to go. And I tell you this, David, I know you spend a lot of time in the Middle East. When I was working at Huddersfield, I was going to the Middle East and asking students, why do you choose to come to Huddersfield? A lot of them were telling me because it's easy. Now that is a major red flag. Do you know what I mean? And if an agent is just capitalizing on that rather than challenging it, you know what I mean? I don't think they're doing you any favors.
Absolutely not. And the way it's almost like hats. If you've got roles of hats, so I've got a role of a compliance officer, role of an academic, role of, an international support officer, etc., etc. For me, always, I've got like 3 or 4 caps on at the same time. As soon as that initial consultation is happening, and almost at the top of that pile is the compliance aspect, because the way you should treat that initial contact is almost like you're having a UKVI interview. Because if that narrative's starting there, that narrative's going to continue in terms of delivery of articulation when they get to that visa interview. So for red flags, I understand the sensibilities of people where they're going, it's easier to get into rather than XYZ countries of visas. It might be cheaper, yada, yada. That's fine. And if it is there, but they still want, of course, study, bury it somewhere, change the narrative, pivot in a different way. Do you know what I'm saying? I get that, but at the same time, tread carefully and making sure that they are being primed, ready, and being absolutely right. And if they're not, then that's where we need to have that chat, a real serious chat with the agency, and making sure that they are taking that approach as well.
Yeah. Abir, what do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it briefly at the beginning that you were talking about KPI of agents. So a lot of times we as agent, we think that the KPI is just to get you more enrollments and more application numbers. But I think that has changed over the time. And recently, especially Huddersfield has come up with a strategic KPIs. And if you could link that KPI with the counseling part as well, like how that KPI has changed and how the counseling is relevant to that. And if you could just brief us about that a bit.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, there's like internal KPIs, which is overarching in terms of our strategy for conversion, our ability to convert business into numbers, but also there's sort of regional KPIs in terms of what we measure in terms of quality. Yes, it can be in numbers in terms of you're reaching sort of conversion aspect numbers as well, but the other aspects of it as well is that you don't hit sort of a ceiling threshold of rejection rates, etc. That's key for me as well. If we're seeing rejection rates from submitting application to rejection, or if it's a visa rejection, we flag it instantly and we step in straight away and have one-to-one consultations to have a chat with them. Because here we go, I want to add something to this, and this is an overarching background thing to the UK market at the moment. More than ever, we know what the narrative's going on in the UK market through the government. I think more than ever, the UKVI, the government, are going to be looking at the agent networks in more detail, and that's going to continue as time goes on, and especially in the sense of, and I don't use this word, but desperation, where numbers are falling in the UK, there might be a sort of a sensibility of let's push it more, let's push any application through, and that's where you still have to more than ever be careful, because you want to make sure that those KPIs, making sure that rejection rates are down, making sure they're meeting the quality of delivery of what they're saying of marketing aspects of the university. All those things have to be covered carefully, because you want to make sure that everyone's doing their due diligence at the front end.
Do you know one thing, David? I'll say here, and I have mentioned this in meetings, and I think we might have even raised it on the agent box before, that there is this thinking at the moment that the UK, the numbers are really down, and I want to qualify that a little bit. What we've seen over the last 3 years is an unnatural, spike in numbers.
True.
When you've been in the game as long as I have, I tell you what, there's always peaks and troughs. But what we've seen a very unnatural set of figures over the last 3 years. And it's compared to those unnatural figures, it feels like the market has gone down. But in fact, I whenever I speak to, having spent time in India, in Turkey, agents are telling me there are still students. Of course, there are students that want to go to the UK. It's now the art of counselling, I think, was really going to play. Whereas there's a lot of agents, a lot of businesses that were set up over the last 3 or 4 years where they've never had to counsel anybody because they've never had any time to counsel. It's just been this flood of applications coming in, and they've got no time to breathe. Whereas I think what they need to do now, those companies, if they're looking for survival, then right now they've got to understand how to counsel students, and really kind of whether that's, students that look, I know you know this, David, that when, the Middle East is a good example. Middle Eastern sponsored students, when you get a flood of, students coming from the Middle East that are government sponsored, agents haven't got the time, or they don't see the need to counsel any of these students. It's very robotic in terms of process applications. But when you're looking at West Africa, you're looking at, the Indian subcon, most parts around the world, you can't get away with that kind of an approach today because the numbers are fewer. You do have the time to counsel, and it should be based on that counseling, because the amount of time you're going to spend with one individual student, you want to make sure that student's going to enroll and you're going to get commission for that student, rather than 6 months ago, a year ago, there was no time for any of that. There's so many coming through the door. Some of them are going to stick. You chuck enough mud at this, some of that mud is going to stick. I think that attitude can't prevail, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. I think I like your phrase now, the art of counselling is key. And I think it is an art. It really is. And I think, like I say, it starts at universities for many cases, the training and the input. And I think when you have these cases where there are dips in the market, you have to recalibrate and rethink about how you approach it, because many people are in the same boat. So what do you add different flavor to it? And how do you make yourself stand out and keep that art of counselling relevant? Because students want different things. But I'll give you an example. So we do universities do training year on year. They might do it biannually, whenever it might be, when the ad hoc go out to market. But we do various ways to try and make us stand out to the counselling. So I know what it's like. I always say to when I meet agent officers, I go, look, I imagine you sit in front of PowerPoint presentations all the time. This is the location. These are the entry requirements. It's the same old. So my aspect to that is just trying to do something different. So what I brought into my training last year as an example to add that sort of different flavour was I'd have a quiz at the end. So I'd use Kahoot or something. I'd like, here we go. There's a little prize at the end or whatever. Not a prize, but you win points or whatever. So then you do the general training at the end. Do you remember what you did? Well, I'm going to throw a quiz at you now. And then you do a competitive edge to it. So that was last year, and that worked out well. Whereas this year is a new flavour, just to make you stand out. We're actually bringing students, ambassadors, to do the training on our behalf. So we've done that on several occasions recently, where rather than me just sitting there and going, this is the location, this is the cost of living aspects, we actually, with the direction of the actual sort of presentation or the discussion, it's almost non-PowerPoint. It's about 3 or 4 students and me sitting down with those discussion points. The counsellors are watching, and then we have talk about each point. So adding a bit of flavour, a bit of memory, a bit of nuance, and then that hopefully then is taken away by that counsellor going, oh, I remember that university because the student said that. So again, there's that art of it, of just trying to refresh things and counter to the market and make it memorable.
Do you know what, David? It's a bit like, the universities can tell you what to sell. Okay. What often universities don't do is tell you how to sell it. And I think that's the bit that you're talking about here. It's not just what it is that we've got that you can promote, but how do you actually go about promoting it? And I think that's the bit that often is missing when agents are talking to universities. Like you said, it's just a boring list of, kind of facts and figures.
That's a really good point, Sean, if you don't mind me interjecting that. And it's just maybe for, I'm sure many universities do, but it's actually a thing for them as a bit of advice, is actually when you sit down with the manager, the counselor manager, or whoever it is, the sort of destination manager, you say, look, how do you counsel your counsellors? What techniques do you have? What are your methods? Seriously, ask that question and just say, look, tell us what they are, and you'd be interested to see what they come back with then, because then you can think, oh, actually, we're on the same boat here. Then if not, then that's where you go away and go, right, okay, we need to do a bit of revision here in that approach.
Look, I'll tell you what, David, we're going to run out of time. It's already been half an hour. I can't believe that. But the one thing I want to say as well, that I remember when TEF first came out, right? The Teaching Excellence Framework. And, you know, I was at Huddersfield. It was TEF Gold. It was absolutely brilliant. But I remember going out to market, asking agents, what does that TEF mean to you? Because every agent will be able to tell you, they've memorized the TEF, you know, kind of statuses. They will say, oh, this university's TEF Gold, this one's silver, this one's bronze, and blah. What does any of that mean? And what I discovered was a mighty black hole that nobody knows how to then, you know, explain that to the student. And actually, what is the relevance of the TEF Gold? And that's when, I'm not going to go into this because it'll be too long, but that's when I used to go into my Indiana Jones analogy as well. You know what I'm saying? But that's for another day. Listen, I tell you what, David, look, it's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. And I think we could probably chat for a hell of a lot longer. But for those of us, those of you guys that, you know, have been listening, you know, so far, if you just joined, you know, we've been talking to David Cliff from the University of Huddersfield about, you know, this idea of counselling students and what the universities expect from their agents in terms of counselling, or do they just care about the numbers coming through the door? Speaking to David, I think, you know, it's very evident to me that there is a requirement or an expectation that the universities have, that the agents are actually counselling their students in the right way. With that in mind, look, it is 32 minutes in. We've got to end this now. But David, I'd like to say a massive thank you for joining us today. These sessions are designed just to give us a snippet of what's going on, and hopefully then people watching it will actually then start to have those discussions. We'd love to have you back on the show another time, which I'm sure we will reach out. The producer will reach out.
Sure, anytime, guys.
Is that, you know, the agent box is possible because of SAM CRM, who are our sponsors, and SAM CRM is a CRM system built by agents for agents. So please go and have a look at their website. With that said, any final thoughts from you?
Well, this has been really, really educational for me. I learned about food, Indiana Jones, and counseling as well. So this has been very productive for me.
Taking 0 from this session is what you're telling me.
But thanks, David, for coming and having that discussion. Absolutely great. And like Shanbhai said, we cannot wait to have you back again. And to all our viewers, we're going to see you next week, next Thursday at 11.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks, Shaman. Just a quick one, just say thank you, guys. I love the podcast. I think what you've got here is a great platform for us to have these kind of discussions. You know, we're always too busy in our own little bubbles sometimes, you know, trying to work towards that conversion. But this is a lovely time just to sit back and have a little chat about life in the university world. So thank you so much. And thanks to Sam's Global's CRM system for supporting this as well. And I look forward to hopefully come back again in the future. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant. Cheers, David. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening, for watching. We'll see you guys next week, same time, Thursday, 11 o'clock UK time. So with that said, very goodbye. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care.